Okay. So today we're going to talk about beginning your presentation strategically and different approaches to take when pitching your sale.
Okay, so we all know first impressions are very important. No matter what the situation, most of us don't ever want to leave a bad impression on someone. These first impressions are not only important in day-to-day social situations, but they are also especially important in business transactions and sales. In just the first minute of talking with a prospective buyer, they are already assessing everything they can about you, from how you dress to how you talk, how neat you look, your intonation, everything. The first minute of your sales presentation, the approach, is pivotal to the prospect even allowing you to finish your story. Beginning with the end in mind is a habit of successful people. Salespeople begin their presentations knowing the key benefits of their product and knowing what to suggest the prospect or customer buy in order to suit their needs. In order to make these suggestions, it is important for salespeople first seek to understand their prospect and second to be understood. This approach to sales is all about caring for the customer. When you genuinely want to help a prospect or customer, they can feel that. So this ethical service results in happiness for both parties and builds long-term relationships with customers.
All right, for salespeople, the approach refers to the time from when you first see the buyer to when you begin to discuss the product. As we all know, approach is the third step in the selling process and the first step in the actual presentation. It is the most important step to fulfill the customer's needs. All right, the right to approach is a salesperson has the right to present the product as long as he proves that he's worthy of the prospect's attention and time, and he can earn this attention by different ways. For example, by being faithful to the sales call objective, by exhibiting product or business knowledge, by expressing a sincere desire to solve a buyer's problem and satisfy a need, by implying that your product will save money or increase the firm's profit margin, and by displaying a service attitude. Concentrating on the product's key benefits for each prospect is very important.
So the approach is everything. You want to have a relaxed attitude going into the approach because it's definitely key to stay calm while talking to your prospect. And first impressions are definitely a big indicator of your successful sales cycle. It takes only 3 to 5 seconds for somebody to actually make that first impression. And the approach, it can be approached in many different ways. You can open with statements, open with demonstrations, and you can even open with questions, and that includes one or more questions, and we're going to dive deeper into each of these approaches as we move on through the slides. So when opening with statements, you can have the introductory approach, and this is the most common approach, but it's definitely the least powerful. You're approaching your prospect by just simply introducing yourself and the company that you're working with. Next, we have the complimentary approach, and that's when you lead with a compliment. And in this case, you can go ahead and compliment the prospect's current business year and how successful they are, or possibly a product that they've newly released. Next, you have a referral, and this can be a pretty powerful approach to take. You're actually going to mention somebody who's referring you to the prospect, and that can definitely give you some credibility. And next we have the premium approach, and this is definitely effective because you're going to go ahead and approach the prospect and actually leave them with samples for them to try on their own. And those are really all of the approaches that you're going to take while opening with statements. So you could say, hey, you know what, I'm going to leave you these samples to try. Give me a call back, or I'll see you next month. Either of those work when taking the premium approach. Next, you can open with demonstrations, and you can start off with the product approach, and that starts off simply by showing the prospect the product. And this is definitely the best to combine with the showman approach. where you're actually going to demo the product. So you could actually hold or pass the prospect the product, and they can then go ahead and either use the product, or you can go ahead and demonstrate the power of the product. And the example in the book shows the paper plate example, but you definitely want to make sure that it is an appropriate time and place to do the demonstration. And lastly, you can open with questions. Using the customer benefit approach is definitely good to use as long as you're prepared for the unexpected. You don't want to just start off by saying, would you be interested in XYZ? Because then the prospect could go off and say, you know what, no, I'm not really interested in any of that. You want to start off with saying something like, you know, Mrs. Holmes, I'd like 15 minutes of your time to show you how to reduce your costs by 20%. And that can really get the prospect's attention. Next, you have the opinion approach, and this definitely shows that you value your buyer's opinion. This is a really good spot to go ahead and reveal opportunities that you might not have been able to get prior to the approach, and can really help create that trust and credibility throughout the sales cycle. And next we have the shock approach, and this has to be used appropriately. You would be using this approach by starting off the approach with a fact that could shock your prospect. And lastly, we have the spin approach, and this is a multi-question approach where you're going to go ahead and talk about the situation, the problem, the implication, and then the need payoff. So for example, if you're a real estate agent and you're approaching a family, you're going to go ahead and ask, what is your current situation like? How many people are in your family? Next, you know, if they're saying they're growing their family, you're going to reveal a problem, and that is going to be the problem for the basis of the sale. So they need a bigger house to house their family. The implication is, again, the fact that they need that bigger house, and the need payoff would be once they buy that bigger house, they're able to house their family comfortably.
All right, nowadays technology is everywhere, and it can be a it can be a powerful attention grabber during the approach. So visual, sound, and touch cause the prospect's mind to instantly focus on the salesperson's words and actions, being a powerful tool during the presentation.
And there's just one question that you have to ask yourself: is the approach important? Of course it is. I mean, 80% of the success is just showing up. And for your approach, again, 80% is just showing up. Having a ton of different sales approach techniques in your arsenal is key for sales. You're able to go ahead and pick out which approach is appropriate for a certain time and be agile within that approach.
All right, so asking questions is actually a very key and important part of a successful presentation. Asking the questions, also known as probes, is an excellent technique for 1, obtaining information from the prospect, 2, developing two-way communication, and lastly, increasing prospect participation. You want the prospect to be thinking about the topic to get their attention in the presentation. You don't want them to be thinking about other things. You want them present and at the moment. There's actually 4 different types of questions that you can use, and we're going to go through them now. And the first one is direct question. This is a closed-ended question that can be answered in very few words. Usually a yes or no would work for it. It all depends. So like asking a question like, reducing manufacturer costs is important, isn't it? And then they would usually be like, yes, it is. And then you'll go ahead and continue the presentation. Unfortunately, with some direct questions, they can actually become negative. So you have to be kind of careful to not ask a question where it's going to just give you a negative no. So it'd be like, may I help you? No. So just go ahead and broaden up your direct question a little bit better. The second one is a non-direct question, which is a question that opens up a two-way communication by beginning the question with who, what, when, how, and why. You guys are all familiar with these questions. So who will be using this product? When will you need this product? Etc., etc. Then there's rephrasing. Rephrasing is a question in which the salesperson rephrases what the prospect has said in order to clarify the meaning and determine the prospect's needs. So basically, you're just kind of restating exactly what the person just told you. So you're saying like, are you saying that the price is the most important thing that you're interested in? And then you go ahead and continue with the presentation. Lastly, there is the redirect question, which you use to redirect the process to selling points that both partners agree on, or prospects agree on. So basically, this is used when the prospect shuts you down from the beginning. So you're walking into a firm and they basically say, no, I'm satisfied with what I have, no thank you. So this is when you will hit them with the, do you agree that having a supplier who can reduce your costs is important? And then you have them go in and you're like, yes, and then you're like, maybe, oh, so this is what I have to offer. So it basically is moving the conversation from being negative to positive. So with this in mind, there's actually 3 rules for using questions. The first one is only use questions that can anticipate the answer to, or that will not lead you into a situation from which you cannot use the escape technique. So basically, don't ask a question where whatever the prospect's going to answer, you're not going to really know how to follow up. So make sure whatever you're asking, you're going to know exactly how to continue the conversation. Second, when using a question, pause or wait after asking to allow the prospect time to respond to it. When you ask a question, just be patient. Wait a couple minutes because they may be thinking of exactly what they need or what they really want to tell you. And lastly, and probably the most important one, is listen to your prospect. If you're going to ask a question, make sure you listen to the answer, because you don't want to ask the question over and over again. And I hope you guys were listening, because we're going to take a Kahoot quiz now about those exact questions. So this is when we'll do the Kahoot.
Okay, so after all of that, what if your prospect just isn't listening to you? What if they're checking their mail or looking at their phone, glancing at the clock? What would you do to grasp their attention? When they're not listening, this is the time to use one of your alternative openers that will tune the prospect into your message. This means that the prospect will be forced to participate by you either using the question approach or the demonstration approach. For example, by asking the prospect a question about their needs, you'll instantly recapture their attention because they can't just ignore you. Or for the demonstration approach, you can show someone something or hand them a prototype or a product to regain their attention. When you handle uncertain situations such as these, it's crucial for you to remain level-headed and calm. So if you can overcome their preoccupation or indifference by quickly recapturing their attention, your probability of making a sale will greatly improve. That was weird. Okay. So this is just a video about basically telling salespeople to listen to their prospects, whatever. We're not going to play it. So. Just for the class.
Okay, so be flexible in your approach. It's basically that. There's really no way of rephrasing that. As simple as it gets. Just be very flexible with your approach when it comes to your presentation. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Tony Robbins. He's like a motivational speaker. He's very famous. He basically says, stay committed to your decisions, but stay flexible in your approach. So basically what this means is that you're going to be super prepared for your presentation, but you still have no idea how your client or your prospect is going to react. So you still need to have some flexibility within your presentation to be able to answer any questions or just figure out a way around what the prospect's actually going to be hitting you with. We're actually going to be reading an article which talks a little bit more about being flexible in your approach, which will stop the presentation. The class will read the article and then we'll continue. And
Jeopardy.
Jeopardy.
Yay!
And then that's the end of our presentation.
Hope you enjoyed it.
Take care. Good night.